let me introduce our featured speaker for tonight, Laura Forczyk. Welcome, and thanks for being with us. Laura is a space industry expert. She's an analyst, author, area expert, and founder of a company called Astrolytical Space Consulting, working with space-based companies, universities, and governments. I just happened to run into one of your studies on a call yesterday, as a matter of fact, for the Camden spaceport that we've been talking with. And Laura is a millennial, master's in astrophysics and well-respected analyst in the industry from here, as you may have heard earlier, right here in the Atlanta area. Laura is also a blogger. You can catch Laura's Space and Space on Space blog at Laura's spaceonspaceblog.com site. And we'll put some links in the chat window later. Laura, I understand you are also a 6-time Space Camp NASA Academy alumnus, and also a mentor for the Brooks Owens Fellowship Program supporting women and gender minorities in aerospace. And I should also mention Laura was founder and former executive director of the Georgia Space Alliance and former president of the Florida Space Development Council. That's quite a mouthful. So hi, Laura, welcome. Thanks for joining the panel tonight.
It's my pleasure to be on.
Next over, at least, no, one down. I feel like I'm on Celebrity Squares or something. Let me introduce Dave Horton to you. Dave is actually an Air Force veteran with an active and reserve duty career in the Tactical Air Command. I understand you demoed C-130Js, which is has been a big revenue generator for the state of Georgia. You did that for a living, then moved more and more into high-tech manufacturing with some of our top industry leaders in that space. And then most recently, Dave started and now leads Next Communication Corporation as their CEO. NextCom just opened, I guess, last July, their a new manufacturing facility in the metro Atlanta area, up in Cherokee County. And they are going to build and sell phased array antenna receiver systems aimed at commercial and military operations. And if you were with us in September, you may recall NextCom CTO Carl Novella presented an outstanding program to us on phased array antenna technology. So welcome, Dave. Thanks for joining the panel this evening.
Steve, thank you so much for having me. We're honored to be on your program.
Great. Next, let's welcome Douglas Clayton. Doug joins us from Princeton, New Jersey, where he is currently the Senior Vice President of Human Capital at one of our largest corporate sponsors, SES. Doug served on the board of SES Maricom. He develops and directs SES's global strategies for talent acquisition. And you may not know this, but Dave is also an award-winning film and documentary producer and director. I understand you are known as the Film Doc, bringing together a passion for film and education. So hi, Doug.
Steve, how are you? Boy, that's such a nice introduction. Hello, everybody. Looking forward to the session this evening.
Excellent. So next, our next panelist is Jack Linder. Jack is actually one of our own SSPI board members, and Jack has been in charge of our education program. Jack's an industry consultant. He owns Linder Consulting, provides project management expertise to broadcast and video and audio clients around the country. Jack is our VP of Education and a 20-year veteran of CNN, so no stranger to the industry by any means. And then started your own business, Jack. And the really thrilling thing about Jack is our STEM program contact. So if you don't know about STEM or now STEM, that helps prepare students for the 21st century workforce. So welcome, Jack.
Thank you, Steve. Clayton, I had to tell you the first satellite I ever dealt with was SES-3. I don't know if you even remember back that far.
How about that? Well, I was actually working for GE Capital at that time, so I don't remember that, but I'm well aware of the history.
Yeah. So now we are starting to fan out into that millennial boomer space that we'll talk about in a little bit. And not to leave for the last, but Christian Adams joining us is one of our most recent SSPI volunteers. Christian joins us from Cary, North Carolina, close to Raleigh. I grew up in North Carolina. Christian just recently joined the space industry from a telecom and sales background. Director of Business Development at a company called Microspace Communications Corporation. Microspace provides wireless and broadcast satellite development and two-way VSAT services for enterprise applications. And Christian has made, you've made a recent pivot in your career and have lived the experience, I guess you could say, of pivoting your career to the satellite industry. So maybe you can share some background stories and have some backstory similar to many of us. How are you, Christian?
Good, good. Thanks for that introduction, Steve. Pleasure to join you guys here today.
Very good. Well, let me start out with, Laura, I've got a couple questions for you. I was really excited to get to read your last book and eagerly waiting for the next generation of that. I think you said it took 3 years. Tell us a little bit about what you went through writing your book on the space age, the rise of the space age millennials.
Sure, I'll keep it brief because I know this isn't our main topic, but yeah, it took me 3 years simply because I didn't really know how to write a book. I never saw myself as a book author. I decided to write the books that I wish someone else had written, but they haven't. So I took it on myself to represent the millennial generation in a better way, because back when I got the idea, I guess it's been about 4 years now, I got the idea of the book. There was lots of stereotypes about millennials, this, millennials, that, millennials killing whatever industry, and it just didn't ring true to me. To me, it was very negative and stereotypical, and I wanted to probe some of those stereotypes in a field that I know, which is the space industry and the space sector. And so I interviewed over 100 millennials who were either in space careers or in university pursuing space careers, and got their perspectives on what inspired them to go to space, how they work best, the ways in which they feel connected online and even globally, and where they hope to go in space, where they hope to explore and how. And as you mentioned, I am working right now on the second edition of that book to cover Generation Z, which I'm loosely categorizing as high school and university age students now who were too young a few years ago to really get interviewed. I could have, but in any case, I'm doing it now to update that because there's even more of an emphasis on inclusion and diversity and partnerships and commercialization, democratization, that kind of mindset as we move forward in the space industry. It's very different from the Apollo era. I wrote a lot of that book during the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11, that big celebration where everyone was being retrospective about Apollo 11. But we millennials don't have that memory. We weren't there, we weren't alive. And so it's a lot of moving away from the nationalism and even some of the more America First kind of terminology, and more towards an international cooperation and partnerships, commercial partnerships. And so it took me a while to write it simply because I didn't know how to write a book. And now I'm more familiar. I'm actually writing my second book on space tourism and private space flight. I've interviewed many astronauts and future flyers at this point, hoping to wrap up the interviews very soon so I can really focus on writing it. And it should be out at the end of this year. So awesome. Anybody can write a book, by the way. I didn't think I'd ever write a book, but you absolutely can. It just takes a lot of dedication.
That's great. And, I was going to ask you what took you so long, 3 years, but as I read, read the book and saw how many people you talked to and covered so many aspects, that was pretty fascinating process. And you mentioned those of us old enough to remember the space program. Do you think that the millennials will, us baby boomers are kind of divided up into the Mercury, Apollo, the space shuttle era, and then the space station era? Do you think millennials will get divided up into, segments?
I'm already seeing it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the generations depending on how old you are. I'm on the older side, and I can already see a difference between me, where I grew up watching Shuttle, and some of the younger millennials, even Generation Z, that are really more inspired by SpaceX. There's that
Right.
kind of generational gap even within generations, and generations are arbitrary anyway. It's just an interesting way to divide up periods of time and ages to see where people might be inspired, where they might be motivated within the space sector, or more broadly within their careers.
How would you see the experience of the new generations coming into the workforce, and what kind of trends have you seen across all the panel that you interviewed for your book?
Yeah, it's a question I asked, and I focused a whole chapter on the generational differences in the workplace. And one of the things that millennials I interviewed spoke about was the differences in technology use. So of course, people who grew up with the technology are much more easily adaptable to that technology, even the technology that came out when we were older. Like, I didn't get my first smartphone until I was I think in graduate school. So I didn't grow up with that, but yet it's attached to me at all times, right? So the very adaptability, and you see this in terms of social media as well. The likelihood of younger people being on social media, and which social media apps, TikTok versus Facebook, the demographic changes there. So younger millennials are and younger people in general are more likely to go towards some of those newer technologies. And there was also gratitude for the older generations to pass down knowledge and to mentor and advise, recognizing that you don't have to reinvent the wheel because people have done it, and you want to capture that knowledge base that of the people who came before you. So you can read, I don't want to rehash the whole chapter, but it's interesting to see where there are challenges and where there's a true benefit of intergenerational working.
Right. Well, you talk about, and we talk about in engineering in particular, but I know if you just look at the titles of the various panelists in your book, you've got a lot of different career paths there. So in addition to engineers, which is always very important, we think, those of us in the engineering area. But what are some of the other paths that people are moving into or are really hot that you see in the space and satellite area?
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of my favorite things to talk about, is that space is not just for scientists and engineers. And I know this is E-Week, we're celebrating E-Week. I'm not an engineer though. I'm a scientist, I'm a physicist. And you do not need to be a STEM major or have a STEM background to work in space. A lot of my clients actually don't have that traditional background, and they come to me because they want my expertise to help them get into space. It's a lot of, business communications, and by communications, I don't necessarily mean telecommunications. I mean writing and video production, and all these different ways that people can use whatever skill set they have. And with the democratization of space, or the opening up of space into many different areas, you see less of a need for just strictly engineering and more of the multidisciplinary need. So you need people who have really good communication skills. You need people who have a good background in business. You need people who know finance, know policy, know law, and you've always needed this. But I think now, with more and more companies coming online, and smaller companies being able to do more, I think that having a multidisciplinary background on your team, it can still be a majority of traditional folks with STEM careers, but you need to have that multidisciplinary aspect in order to keep up with what's going on and keep up with your competitors. Because if you're trying to create a business plan, if you have a startup idea and you need to create a business plan, your engineering degree doesn't help you with that. So you need to have someone to help you with that, right? If you are trying to do something that crosses into different regulations, you need to have lawyers. You need to have policy people who talk to the policy makers who can create laws and regulation. You know, it's so interdisciplinary. And that is where I see a lot of growth, is making sure that people know that they can come, not just within the United States, but globally, they can come to these companies and work in a lot of different areas. And it does not have to necessarily be STEM.
Yeah, that's a important differentiation, I think. And you mentioned something that I find interesting. One of the things that I've read is, from a generational standpoint, is us boomers tend to have come up in the space industry as kind of a nationalistic, let's beat the Russians to the moon kind of thing. But you talk about the globalization, and I think you mentioned that the millennials tend to be more globally oriented. Our communication systems allow us to work with anybody around the world. Is that a difference that you kind of see generationally, that kind of takes us into a more global market and global business perspective?
Absolutely. International partnerships are getting more and more common and even crucial. And of course, it depends on the industry, because if you're in the defense arena, if you're protected by ITAR or sensitive information, then you can't necessarily work as globally as some other players that are more maybe science oriented or strictly business oriented, where they can work. For example, in the United States, Congress has enacted a law which forbids the United States government from working directly with China. However, there are US companies that can work directly with China in their space program. So that's where that comes in, that balance of, okay, it depends on if you are within a government regulation or some kind of sensitive information that you can, you have to be more careful about who you're working with internationally. But you're absolutely right. There's a generational gap too, because as people grow up using the internet, we don't necessarily know where people are coming from. All these participants I see, I don't know where they're calling from. There might be international people on this call right now. We don't know. It's not as important. So people in my age group and younger tend to have grown up not necessarily caring about the geographic boundaries, and in fact seeing it as pretty normal to have friends from all over the world and not knowing what time zone they're in, not knowing what language is their first language necessarily. And so that is getting to be, especially as other countries get on board with space agencies. You know, there's Costa Rica announced this week that they are creating their own space agency. There's new space agencies popping up every year, and we're seeing a global action take place in space. So even if a country doesn't have their own space agency, maybe they're launching a satellite. So there's so many different aspects of space that is inherently global. It's no surprise that space is international.
Yeah, very true. Now, I think you do a lot of consulting with candidates or people in the industry, people talking about their careers, getting advice from you. For those people that are, maybe even attending this program, what are the kind of things that you would suggest people? Number one, what things are most relative to be doing to move into a career, and how do you advise people to kind of accelerate or promote their career in the industry?
Yeah, this is a really common question that I get, and it depends on where you're coming from, and it depends on what experience you've had so far. So for students, I recommend that they just get involved, just whatever is available to you. If you've got a club or university in your a university club organization, or even a regional organization that you can join it, get involved. A research group that you can join it. Whatever it is that's interesting to you, get involved. And right now that might even be virtually. So maybe there's a virtual organization you can join and create things through email or Slack or whatever means and collaborate that way. It's just getting your hands involved, literally and figuratively, depending on where you're coming from, what backgrounds you have. So making sure you make those connections, network, get some real experience, even if it's just, a volunteer research project, that's still experience. Something under professor, that's experience. A summer internship, that's experience. All of that is very valuable. And you can figure out what you like and what you don't like that way as well. Now, if you've already been working in another career and you want to work in space, this is actually the majority of the coaching clients that I get. And it really depends on what background you have, because whatever background you have, you can apply it to space. And some people want to go back to school and get another credential, and that is totally possible, but you don't have to. I've had clients that come from oil and gas and sales of other types of technology, and even dental hygiene. That was my favorite because that's totally out there. There's so many different ways to get involved in space with the expertise that you already have and the skill set that you already have. And it's all about talking to the space related audience that you want to talk to and tell them how your skills can benefit their company or their organization. And so it's a way of just messaging yourself, making sure that you know that you've got, in fact, in some ways, becoming from another industry can be really helpful. SpaceX put out a job posting a few months back about hiring seamstress, people who know how to sew to sew up like parachutes and that kind of thing. So sometimes coming from another industry can really benefit the space industry because we don't want to be so insular, and space industry tends to be very insular. So bringing ideas and perspectives and skills from another industry can actually be a benefit. So don't feel like you don't belong, because you do. And you can always reach out to me. I'm always happy to help, whether it's just a quick email message or actually coaching. We also have a course online on the Astrolytical website. So I'm always happy to help to direct people into how they can best enter the space industry.
That is very key, and thanks for bringing that out. Let me go to some of our other panelists now, and we'll come back to that in a minute. Let me shift over. And let me remind you to use the chat window to ask any questions. Michael's going to collect those. But Dave, I wanted to move over to you. Really exciting stuff that you guys are doing over in my neighboring county over there. And the new mobile antenna that you've got, we learned a little bit about in September. Can you share with us a little bit more about NextCom? Speaking of jobs and hiring and careers, what kind of technical talent are you guys bringing on board? What do you look for? What kind of skills and things? And what's your vision for growing technology in the area?
Well, lots of questions there. Let me just start out by saying that NextCom was established for the purpose of offering a differentiating antenna technology to the marketplace, both commercial and defense. I have been intimately involved in very unique defense and commercial antenna development programs all around connectivity. You've probably flown on an aircraft that has had a Wi-Fi satellite antenna system on top of it that I have been involved with either at Panasonic or through other OEMs and manufacturer service providers that have used those antennas to deliver technology. In this case, we take off-the-shelf parts and we introduce them into our design. And we have come up with a very unique design with our relationship with Georgia Tech. So we like to call it a Lego design. That Lego design allows us to scale antenna technology to meet the needs of a customer at a connectivity level. So we can basically click a few more Legos together, give them more bandwidth, and that provides a very unique, scalable, cost-effective, high-performance connectivity solution, whether that's in a direct-to-home environment, whether that is for recreational vehicle, maritime, aero, and all of the uses that the U.S. Defense Department will have for supporting the warfighter. The ability for us to tap into the technical schools here in Georgia is a very important part of how we are moving forward. We understand we have a wonderful university system. We're aligned with Georgia Tech. We have engineers that are on the NextCom team supporting all disciplines from RF, electrical, mechanical. They are a critical path to our success. An equally critical part of our team are the folks that are the electronic assembly technicians, the folks that really are at the pulse of the product. Our engineers certainly go into very unique details in designing products and technology to support customers, obviously. But the business is successful as a result of the entire team. But I will say I have a special place in my heart for the folks that are making it happen, from an assembly, test, certification, and all the other necessities that we have to make the product successful. So they are an equally vital part of how Nexcom manages its business and hires its people. Our intentions are to tap into Chattahoochee Tech, which is in all the surrounding counties here in Cherokee County. We've got Chattahoochee Tech in Marietta, which is Cobb County, here in Cherokee County, then as well as in Pickens County. They all teach an electronics coursework. So the ability for us to tap into and influence curriculum aligned to the needs of our business and to the unique nature of the products that we are manufacturing here in Nexcom really affords us the opportunity to have a very successful trained workforce, knowledgeable workforce, and we'll be hiring over the course of the next 3 to 6 months, roughly 50 additional people. We'll be running our manufacturing operation here virtually 24/7 once we finalize the next quarter's worth of prototype work. But we are right now in the process of hiring RF engineers, electrical, mechanical, and other disciplines that are specific and unique to RFIC or chip design. We really are quite a dynamic group of engineers, technicians, and business people that really make Nexcom what it is. And we're very excited about the path. And you'll see much more about us in the upcoming press. I'm certain of that.
Well, you know, we've been reading a lot about you lately. You just had a new, you put a new board together and all that good stuff. And I'm really glad that you mentioned the tech school.
That I am a fan of tech school. And I think if there's a message that I want you to take from this, everyone that's listening out there, do your homework, understand what your true passion is, and be very careful about how you proceed with regards to an engineering degree or other. And what I mean by that is, if you're not passionate about it and you don't see yourself doing that for a lifetime, then rethink your position. But I would encourage you to take a look and sample what might be your newfound love in aerospace or space by trying a technical school and enrolling and really rolling your sleeves up and really understanding how you can get closer to the passion that you need to have to be successful for yourself, your future family. And I think that's a very comfortable way to move forward if you're certainly uncertain. But there are plenty of opportunities in electronics manufacturing or other areas in the space manufacturing and assembly businesses that could interest you. Keep exploring. You'll find that option, but you'll do that with a well understood position and consider the debt. That's always something to think about.
Very good. Very good. Doug, you're next on my screen. Let me jump over to you. What Dave is talking about, I'm sure you see from an SES standpoint, and I think you've been in HR for several decades. What does it look like to you from SES in terms of the kind of people? Are you looking for that broad spectrum, or are you really focused on, certain key technology areas?
Well, it depends on where we're hiring. So in some areas, we are looking for key technologies. A few years ago, high throughput satellites, that was the big thing for us. So we were looking for talent to help us develop HTS. About a year ago or so, we began to shift our focus toward, college students who were studying not space, not so much mechanical or electrical engineering, not satellites, but software engineers, programmers, software systems engineers. Now the big focus is on cloud. So it kind of depends on where we are as a business, the direction that we're moving. And then that will certainly determine the skills and the talent that we're looking for. Now, we do look for people who have a broader skill as well. I think one of the questions that you asked earlier is, what do we tell people, how do they distinguish themselves from the rest of the crowd when they're interacting with SES at career fairs, at colleges and things like that. And, it's really showing that they're passionate about doing something, not just learning, but giving back to society or being involved with a club, making a difference, studying that way, interacting well with people, because that shows collaboration, which is really important for any company, and especially a global company such as SES. So we do look for those things, their communication skills, their interaction skills. Those are all quite important, and those are much more broad in nature. Now, the way that we bring folks into SES from university, a couple of ways. One is it could be through our summer intern program, which started years ago as basically college students who were friends and family of employees, but we became much more stringent in our requirements. So we now have great relationships with Embry-Riddle, Stevens Institute of Technology, MIT, and others. And so our summer intern program is populated with students who come from those areas, not just those areas, but those areas. So we've really raised the bar, I'll say, in terms of university education and our expectations and what we're looking for. And even within those schools, we want those interns to be able to work well with people. So we're watching how they do in terms of teamwork and personality skills, let's say, while they're with us. We also have something called the SES Associate Program, where we'll hire people who have a master's degree and they're out of college, and we'll hire them for a 2-year period where they'll participate in 4 6-month rotations around the company, around the world. They may start in Washington, D.C., but then they could easily do rotations in Singapore, building a satellite in California, Luxembourg, etc. And they do that for 2 years, and then with the plan of then hiring them into the company full time. That's been very successful. We've been doing that since 2007. The other way that we develop our talent, so once they come in and they've been with us for a couple of years, we have something called the LDP, or Leadership Development Program. This is where we identify probably the top 1 to 1.5% of our talent to become our next generation of leaders, and it's working. We have people like, there's a fellow on the call right now named Aaron Shuri, who's no longer with SES. He's one of the top attorneys with Intelsat, and he went through our leadership development program. Steve Collar, our CEO, he went through it back in 2007. Ty Rubin, our current legal counsel. So we have a lot of folks who have elevated themselves up to actually run the business, who have gone through that program. Now, a valuable feeder group for us for that pipeline really comes from our associate program and recent college grads. So that's really worked quite well for us. And what do we have to offer students? Well, we're clear that college students are looking for things besides making money or building really cool things, which we can offer both, but they're also looking for what's our commitment to diversity. And we've done a lot more with that lately. And also ESG, our method to give back to society. And I know when we've met with students at MIT, for instance, we were really pleased as to how interested they were in that. We thought that they would be pleased primarily in our satellite work and business. And of course they were, and that was their primary focus. But they're also very interested in, well, what are we doing to help society? So that's kind of the framework in terms of us bringing people in and then populating our organization.
Yeah, so you guys have just a ton of programs for those. I have to confess, though, as a former corporate guy, we often referred to you guys as being the evil HR people. How do I, as maybe a grad student, or I've been in the industry for a couple of years. How do I get past you and get into the organization, get some attention?
You can't. You've got to come through me. So no, not at all. It's yeah. I mean, we view ourselves as the method to help find talent. That's it. And so once they're in, they're in. But again, these programs that I'm describing, it's really the human resources folks who designed them and created them.
Yeah.
So it's,
Very good.
so we're there. We like to help folks kind of move down the path and make it a successful journey.
Very good. Hey, let me move back over, I think to my right, your left. Jack, thanks for joining us, Linder Consulting. But you've been working on that entry side and bringing up, from the education standpoint, what's the message that STEM and STEAM is bringing, and how are you coaching people coming up in the education system to enter their careers?
I have to tell you, I've been listening to this, and every speaker has something that I just wanted to jump in and say, you're right. Absolutely. I have so many little things. All the way, Laura, you mentioned that SpaceX needed seamstresses, I believe. People don't know this, but our first spacesuits were made by the company called Playtex. The seamstresses there were the ones who could actually sew that well to make the spacesuits. You talk about we need people from the technical colleges and everything. The industry has become much more disciplinary. In other words, people used to just work on computers and that was it. That's all they knew. Well, I need somebody who needs to know how to work with computers and can know how the cooling works and how electricity works and everything else. Our industries need people from all works. And as you mentioned, they need to be able to work with other people. There's a great book out, by the way, called Skunk Works, which talked about the Skunk Works, which developed the SR-71 and everything else. And their concept was they put the designers could only be 50 yards or so from the actual machinists who made the equipment, so they could all work together. And it was what made them successful. When you talk, Laura, you talked a little bit about getting in with organizations. And I harp on this every time I talk to students. Every industry, whether you are working in space and SSPI, I did most of my work in television. The organization was called SMPTE, or the Technology Association of Georgia. Daryl, I know you're very active with them. Every industry has a group that promotes that industry. I will tell every student, find that group, go and visit that group, go to their meetings. Every one of them has a meeting and you can go there and learn. Not only will you learn, but you will network with people. You will be able to talk to people. You'll find out if this is something I want to do for 40 years, or do I want to do something else? It is incredibly important to do that. You talk about HR, I think I read somewhere that the average resume is viewed for 8 seconds. Is that it? Before a decision is made, whether or not it's worthy of other viewing?
Yeah, that's probably very true. Yep. Just like in an interview, the decision is made usually within the first 30 to 40 seconds.
And I will tell students, and I will say, as you work, you build a resume, you spent probably months building that resume just to make it look just perfect. And then I tell the student, look to the person on your right. They did the same thing. The person on your left did the same thing. How is your resume going to look any different? Well, one of the ways it's going to look different is I'm a member of SSPI. I'm a member of SMPTE. I'm a member of TAG, and I go to the meetings. That is going to tell the people that are hiring that you are not just in it to get a job, that you're in it for a career and you want to learn. There's a great quote that, by the way, that I came across literally just yesterday. It's from Isaac Asimov. education isn't something you can finish. And for anybody who's looking to get in our industries who thinks that they're going to finish their 2-year or their 4-year education and then they're done, go some other industry. Because in the industries we're in, the technology you're in is changing so fast that every one of us here will tell you that we have to attend these kinds of meetings on a regular basis just so we can keep up. So you are looking for something that you need to enjoy, that you need to be in and say, this is what I want to do. I'm going to be involved. Again, go to those meetings, network, talk to people. And while HR, everything does go through HR, no question, you're going to be the one to find out if there's an opening. And if you network, if you talk to people.
Yeah, very good point, Jack. I think that's, the big message there is network, network, network.
I will tell you, by the way, that I was chair for SMPTE for 7 years. And when students came to our meetings, I would literally take each student aside and not let them sit together. I would take each student and say, okay, I'd like to introduce you to George. He's been in the industry for 30 years. He's going to explain everything.
Yeah.
And we'd assign him a mentor.
That's a very good point, Jack. On the other side, we as industry members kind of have a responsibility to mentor those folks coming into the business as well. So Christian, let me move over to you. I know some of that may resonate, and I know you've been involved. The first email I saw that was shared from or about you was asking where you could volunteer and how you could get involved with SSPI and those kind of things. And you in particular, you kind of pivoted in your career. You were doing still IT, still technical telecom stuff, but I'm curious what attracted you to space and satellite area?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, I think the thing that attracted me is just space in general. It just seems so cool to me. And I think a lot of us can agree. We kind of nerd out about space when you talk about it. Like it's the next frontier. Watching Star Wars, Space Track, and all of, you kind of nerd out about space. But the thing that intrigued me into satellite specifically is just the ability to connect really anywhere around the world. Coming from telecom. There's a lot of technology, a lot of progressive ideas there, but I think there are still some restrictions as far as infrastructure, like network infrastructure. You can only go as far as you have a cellular connection. Each and every one of us here have been in dead spots before and things of that nature. And satellite, obviously, you don't have those. You don't have those problems. So that probably is the thing that intrigued me the most, outside of me just nerding out about space and wanting to find a way to get into the industry. And I think Laura hit on a great point when she said to kind of leverage what you do best. My background is in business development, sales, consultation. And initially you probably wouldn't think you're going to get into the space industry with that type of a background, but I think it's so varied as far as what the space industry has to offer these young students that are on the call here today. Don't look at your background or your, what you're studying in school and say, there's no way I'm going to be in the space industry with what I'm going to school for, because we need people that think outside of the box. We need people that are thinking about what does the future of satellite look like? What does the future of space look like? And that's, kind of the mindset and thought that I'm in right now. And that's what makes it so exciting. I get to have these almost brainstorming sessions where we're like, all right, we see where we're at right now. We see what the industry looks like, but what's the future? What's the future of connections? What's the future of space? What's where are we going to be in 10, 20 years from now in regards to space technology? So that's the exciting part about it. So any of the students on the call, I would tell you to get excited about, the prospect of joining this industry, because it's not only the next frontier for us, I think, as human beings and where we're gonna be, but just its technology as a whole. I think it's the next frontier of technology, honestly.
Now, did you move from a big company to a small company, or kind of lateral, or?
Yeah, I did, which was also kind of a weird situation. I went from a really large telecom company, probably the largest out there, to I won't say a small company, but in the scope of comparing it to the company that I came from, definitely a smaller company. But I think the thing that it provided was the ability to be agile in my thinking. I'm constantly in meetings where we're creating new projects, creating new ideas, and actually being able to put those together. That type of stuff is exciting, where you have a say-so in this is what we're going to do as a company, and this is the direction we're going to go. And it's something that the industry needs, and you're able to connect those dots from the manufacturer, to your sales reps and things of that nature. I think that part is exciting.
Yeah, I think you're right. What's the best way if you're a student to get an internship? Anybody?
I'll say, just because I've been approached this way, is just reach out to them. Don't be afraid to reach out via LinkedIn and send them a message and let them know your story.
Right. Reach out, make contacts, kind of goes into that networking.
I'll add to that. There's some umbrella organizations. The Brooke Owen Fellowship is one for women and gender minorities in aerospace. There's also several other ones like that. Matthew Isakowitz Fellowship, Patty Corey Smith Fellowship, Zed Fellowship, and I have personally done the NASA Academy. So there's different umbrella organizations where you can apply to that, and that'll filter you down into different companies, or in my case, NASA organizations.
And I go back to the organizations network, find that organization. You'll find out where those internships are, and people will talk to you, and you'll find out, and you can apply.
Let me throw a question out to the whole panel, and we'll just do a quick round robin for everybody. If in 2 sentences or less, what top piece of advice would you give to anyone attending tonight's program, interested in either starting a career or advancing their career in the space industry? And Laura, let me start with you again.
2 sentences is tough. Okay, so to reiterate some of the things that other people said, explore what your passion truly is. Explore what that is. And I know it's cliche to say follow your passion, and I don't exactly mean it that way. I mean, space is big and aerospace is even bigger. So you need to narrow it down. When I was a student, it was, this is more than 2 sentences, sorry. You just need to narrow it down, figure out what it is that you really want to focus on and go after that.
That is right on. Christian, I'm going to change up a little bit. Back to you. What are your 2 sentence advice?
So I would say the first thing is start to build your brand already. Start to think about how you want to be seen in the industry and start to build that brand. And the second part I would say is just start networking, start reaching out on LinkedIn, start looking for mentors in the industry that you can kind of, get information from and aggregate all of that information. So build your brand and network as much as possible.
Good advice. Jack, over to you. What are your 2 sentences?
I think it's what I had talked about. Find that group or groups that are in the areas that you are interested in. Go there, attend the meetings, talk to the people, and make sure that this is something that you have a passion for, something you want to do for 20, 30, 40 years. And as Christian said, network and learn.
Very good. Very good. Doug, our big company representative and filmmaker, what's your best advice?
If I were to add anything to all of the good advice that's already been given, I'd say be prepared to pivot, because the world just changes so rapidly. If you think of Moore's law and how quickly the technology changes, well, everything is just changing so rapidly. So just be flexible, be prepared to pivot, and then move in different directions. And then you'll eventually find what you're truly passionate about, and then just dive in, go deep with great grit.
Flexibility is key. Mm-hmm. Be ready to pivot when you need to.
Yeah.
Dave, final comment from you. What 2 sentences would you share with everybody?
I would have to say, don't be afraid to explore opportunities in the military. There are some very exciting career paths that you can follow. Now with the new Space Force, there are ways to get involved, and maybe through those engagements, it will give you an opportunity to really find your passion and be able to pursue that. And it would be a good starting point for consideration. Technical school, very much the same. I wish you all the best.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Dave. Hey, guys, I want to thank everybody on the panel tonight. This has been a great program, hopefully very informative from everybody. Christian Adams, thank you. Jack Linder, Douglas Clayton, Dave Horton, much appreciation for you and your guys. And Laura, thank you so much for joining us tonight. If you guys haven't picked up Laura's book, please do that. It's well worth it. And I think, Laura, you've been blogging for 15 years or so, if I remember correctly. As far as connections go, you're the connection person. So I want to thank all of you tonight. Michael, thanks for setting this up. I'm going to turn it back over to you.
No, I am ready. I have a list of things to whip through as fast as I can. And before people start logging off, let me remind you, we do have 2 door prizes. I'm going to talk about the first one, which is from CCI, Mr. Daryl Berman, who have been a great sponsor of the Southeast chapter. And this is a $50 gift card that CCI have donated as the door prize to give away. And Daryl, if you'd like to tell us, give us your, I think, 30 to 40 second elevator speech about CCI. Tell us what you do and what the company does.
Yes, thank you, Michael. It was a great program, especially to the panelists here today. And critical components, what we do is critical power. We provide a lot of these critical infrastructure solutions, many times to some of the uplink and downlink facilities. And there are a lot of manufacturers that provide these solutions, and we specialize that with working with the people who build the facilities. And you can find more information by checking our website or social media at cci.tech or criticalcomponents.net. And this is Daryl Berman, and thanks for joining us. Also, I'm speaking for the Technology Association of Georgia's Infrastructure Society. There's a big event coming up in April that may be of interest to you. April 28th and 29th. It's a virtual event. There'll be about 1,200 people online. It's the largest technology group in North America, over 30,000 members. And the website there is tagonline.org. And thank you very much.
Let's do this. Whoever's a student and is still online, put your camera on, because I think we only have the presenters and the organizers with active video right now. But if you would like, this is the first one, is the $50 gift card from CCI. If you are brave enough and want to win this, if you want to put your video on, like in the next 3 seconds.
I would. I actually just don't have a camera. So that doesn't really help.
Okay, so we've got Chris, Madalena, and Sarah, I'm seeing. So 3. Let me hit the random number thing again here. And that will be Madalena. Congratulations, you are the winner of the $50 gift card. Do you want to tell us which college you go to or educational facility?
Braswell High School.
Oh, high school. That is even better. That is even better. Well, round of applause. Congratulations for Madalena.
Thank you.
We've got your email address here, so we'll get that sorted out to be able to do that. And
Okay.
Steve, if you're ready
Thank you.
for... Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for staying. And as well as the gift card, taking in this fabulous advice, information from the panelists and from Laura, the featured speaker. Steve, if you want to say something about the second.
Yes, and thank you, Laura, for agreeing. I kind of committed you before I asked you if you had a book left, but Laura is going to donate an hopefully autographed copy of your book.
Called Rise of the Space Age Millennials. You can find it on Amazon, both ebook and paper, Barnes & Noble ebook, and also if you go to astrolytical.com, you can order your own autographed copy, which, yes, we will be raffling right now.
Very good.
Very good. Well, I see Saba has turned a camera on. Are you a student of some sort, high school, college?
Yes, I'm doing my bachelor's degree at the moment.
Okay, and we've got Chris still in this. So it's between Sarah, Saba, and Chris. So we're going to do this by coin toss. So Saba, heads or tails?
Heads, always.
It is. So you're still in it. Sarah, you need to leave your video on if you're doing this. We need to do this fairly quickly. Okay, heads or tails?
Tails.
That's heads, sorry. So it's between Chris and Saba. So, hey, you were in the game. You're in the game.
No,
that's
so
random
unlucky.
and luck. But Chris, as Saba chose the coin toss the last time, it's up to you. So heads or tails?
Heads.
It's tails. I'm not fibbing either. That means Saba, you have won the signed book from Laura. So well done.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
If you could email me, I'll type my email address again and just send me your mailing address and I will send it to you.
Of course. Oh, thank you so much. Okay. Thank you. Let me see. Can I type it in the chat? That'll be okay.
Well, I mean, like privacy concerns, you probably shouldn't, but there's my email address. Just send it to me.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I want to really emphasize, and Daryl knows the value of this, public speaking in terms of being able to communicate and present yourself. I'm a huge advocate for Toastmasters. Daryl is in Toastmasters as well. But whichever public speaking course you can go to, if it's offered in a high school, college, or whatever, that is a critical thing. Do not run away from it. It can change your life for the better, and to feel comfortable talking to people and big groups of people literally can be more important than what you do have on that resume. It literally can change your life. And I'm not
Make some good connections too.
Yeah, I'm not underestimating that. And then the last thing I have to say is 2 words: be curious.
Very good point. I'm curious how many people come to these remote meetings without wearing pants.
And with that, I'd once again, round of applause to everybody, the presenters, Steve for producing it, the students, the questions we had and everything. Really, really good. So I'm officially closing the meeting, but please stay on, let's talk. And I'm stopping the recording. Right.